You'll always be a dork. I don't know how long it's been since some people have graduated high school, but the second you do, you find out who's weird and who's not. I don't keep up with the Joneses, but certain information from coworkers my age does get back to me. Typically, they talk to me about a peer who is dating 18-year-olds or a pretty girl who got married and has 2 kids already. It makes me think about my high school reunion, getting there and putting the pieces together on how people turned out to be based on their personalities when we left. Typically, the weird kids get weirder. I'm not talking about the blue-haired girls with piercings. I'm talking about the super seniors and the guy who slept with half his grade. I'm talking about the girls who used people for homework and who flirted with the teachers. When I was in high school, all I really did was observe anyone who wasn't my friend. I don't think I was a super good person in school, but honestly, I don't know. I'm going based off of one person's testimony, someone that I used to know. The smart kids stay smart. They go to college and get a good job. Then there's me. Now, yeah, I might be responsible, but I'm still dorky. I fixate on musicals, Minecraft, and self-help topics. I'd rather observe people than form deep connections because it's safer. But with all that said and done, I'm looked at as a leader in work and in home, or at least someone who carries himself in a good way, a way that most people my age apparently don't. Trying to observe myself from my point of view is really dangerous because I'm very self-critical. I'm not a perfectionist or a pessimist, at least in my opinion, but I do have problems with my self-esteem. Who doesn't? I think that's why I'm so into self-help. I want a way out and I'm not giving up. My hopes are high and I want my life to be different than the role I'm supposed to assume. When learning about self-help, I came across a theory called detachment. Essentially, to achieve a goal, you can't be attached to the outcome. Now, I'm still not 100% sure how you can be detached to achieve a goal, but I do know that having detachment can lessen internal stress when getting what you want out of life. If I want a six-pack for all intensive purposes, I have to let go of the idea. It's not about getting my six-packs in 2 months for the summer. It's about becoming an athlete. It's about falling in love with the sport or with the gym. And when I become that person who loves to exercise, I will naturally obtain a six-pack. The same thing with money, I guess. When I fall in love with learning or developing a business or making good YouTube videos, then the money will naturally fall in. But what if it's not just money I want? What if I want attention, clout, fame? The problem with being a dork is you don't have that. Now, I could very well open a faceless YouTube channel and stream Minecraft to gain a small fandom. But then I'm just a person who plays Minecraft. I'm still a dork. This makes me wonder, will I be like this forever? To make it clear, I'm going to hopefully insert a graph on the dork v nerd scale. This is what a dork is. Someone with a secret obsession, if you couldn't tell what mine is by what you're watching and listening about. And social ineptitude. Personally, I kind of mind being this way. I don't want to have social ineptitude like other people. I want a community, not just fans, not just people to talk about self-help about. It sucks. I'm not going to sum up my entire life into a Venn diagram that was definitely made by someone stoned in high school, but it does lead me to wonder, will I always be a dork? Okay, so let's actually break down why I perceive myself this way. First, this is subjective to my experience as being the official just kidding. It's not how others experience me. Other people experience me based on how they perceive reality and their own interpretations of everything that has happened to them in their lifetime. So being that I am also human, I experience reality based on my own interpretation, based on a ruler system of who's popular, who's rich, and who's attractive. The 3 main human metric systems. Considering that growing up, I perceived myself as less attractive, poor, and socially isolated, I then by default would put myself into the dorky category. Second, no way out. So if your human metric system increases by either being popular, rich, attractive, or in some cases highly skilled, does that mean that chasing one of these values would improve someone else's interpretation of myself? Yes. Well, no. Well, maybe. Let's just say you become rich. This doesn't mean that you don't see yourself as a nerd. There are many rich people who get used for money, even though they're smart. We all know that billionaire who founded a mega company who wants to settle down with a 25-year-old. I'm not saying that they're not in love. I'm saying I don't know if that 25-year-old is mainly there for the person or the money. I think they love the billionaire indirectly because they love the money. They love the lifestyle. Now, I'm not necessarily planning on being the next billionaire, although I wouldn't mind it. But being rich doesn't necessarily change your self-concept. Look at the poor people who win the lotto. Over 30% of them end up bankrupt, and I'm sure more only end up in the middle class threshold. That's because their self-concept of being poor didn't change, and within 10 years or so, their subconscious imprint has done a good job at regulating their threshold back to their original self-concept, the concept of being poor. Being attractive or improving on your looks may not improve your self-concept either. How many times have you heard of the girl who went to get lip filler 3 different times? Or the girl who is starving herself because she's trying to lose weight? What about that guy who's into bone smashing and taking steroids? They all have an inferiority complex digging at them in their mind. Third, comparisons. If I was in a room full of people who depended on me, it wouldn't matter if I was a dork outside of that room. Inside of it, I would be a leader. If I had a Minecraft fandom, it wouldn't matter that I played a game that's 15 years old. I would be supreme. I don't need a fandom in particular, but you get the point. The environment that you're in dictates the way you are perceived. So is the answer to change your environment? Not exactly. Even if you change the environment you're in, most people subconsciously create the same conditions that they grew up in. Think about the lotto winners. But the only way you know where you are in the social hierarchy is by comparing yourself to other people. So maybe deleting the social structure and not comparing yourself to someone who is more socially adaptable is the answer. 90% of your personality comes from the past, who you were. In fact, most of that personality comes from how your environment was in the first 10 years of life. If you're an only or eldest child, the world seems to demand responsibility and respect from you. If you're the middle child, you may have to fight for admiration. You're the black sheep. If you're the youngest, you might have to demand respect from others. You're carefree and more empathetic. The problem with these stereotypes, many people cling on to who they used to be in the past. The red pill theory is that if you change your identity, you change your life. If only you can become a different person with a different identity, you can finally become the dream person who has all the cars, all the money, and all the Minecraft garden tools. It's never real. Part 2. Reality. Obtaining materialistic things doesn't make you less of a dork. In fact, it makes you a bigger one. I think that obtaining anything out of the current complex you have of yourself reinforces it. The way that you perceive yourself gives you the definition of how society perceives you. You act according to the rule book you've given yourself, the rule book that someone else has given you, potentially the peers from school. You just adopted the terms and conditions. You're continuing with the program now that the system has been downloaded. Everything in your past has led to the person who you are today. In order to change that person, you have to go through trauma or a massive change. This will lead you to look at the world differently. Once you have a different lens, you'll act accordingly. This could be good or bad, and you can't really control the trauma, nor should you be desperate to create a traumatic experience in order to develop a new behavioral code. But you can make a massive change in your life. For some people, this might be surgery. For others, moving to a new environment might be the cause, a new job, or hanging out with a different group of people. But even if we do change the external, if the internal doesn't, we'll subconsciously create the same story in our heads over and over. We will act the same. This is our input, and the output is how most people perceive us. The problem with having so much self-awareness is it can help you and it can kill you. If you have a problem with the way people perceive you, you can start to dislike yourself. This creates trauma in itself. If you pretend to be someone else in an environment that wants to perceive you differently than the way you would like to, then you dilute yourself. Most people do that. Honestly, this is how I perceive how corporate America operates. Just a bunch of self-centered people with empaths who act like they're self-centered in order to fit in. Eventually, the empaths can't take the pressure and quit, or they lose themselves. This is how I see myself, stuck in the pressure between conformity and certainty of my relationship with self. I question if I should change. How would that go? And if the problems I create are just adoptions of issues that stem from the past. Maybe I just do a good job at projecting the past to now, trying to create a new narrative, trying to win what I lost, constantly chasing that feeling of doubt and insecurity. So can we change? Is there a way out? First, we have to ask ourselves, why would we want to change? Is there a reason to? For me, perhaps the obsessionness with dorkiness isn't the problem. It's the social ineptitude. Why can't I be more persuasive or light? Should I fake it or remain true to my core feelings? I'm going to guess that other people think the same. Like I said, the value system that we humans place ourselves on does have to do with social hierarchy. But I think while we're going through our early 20s, we have to come to terms with the person we've adapted to be, the person that kept us alive. I mean, that's how your brain works anyways. By no means do I mean repeat childhood trauma or never go to actual therapy. Having an infringement on your life versus having a personality difference between others is a notable distinction. I say use your dorkiness for good. Find that thing that you obsess over. Start looking at it as a pro versus a con. You are different, and that's good. Stop trying so hard to create change in your life when it's not needed. The worst person to be is an insecure dork, someone who has resentment over others. Did you guys ever watch Monsters, Inc. University? You remember Randall? He was nerdy. He had glasses and tried so hard to fit in. Even after he was with all the jocks, he was a loser. Do you remember how he acted in the first movie? This is what happens when you hate being yourself. You have to be like Mike and find that person who brings out your weirdness, the person that matches your differences like Sully. You'll always be a dork if you perceive yourself as one. If you continue to say that you're odd or nobody gets your personality. Even if you get a bunch of money or women or yes men, some people will still call you out. People can see your insecurities better than you can. The worst part is the ones that have power. They become manipulators and dictators purely out of resentment that they've had for the way that they were treated. Constantly in the cycle of torment of being inferior to others, just like Randall. This is why I say getting money while having an inferiority complex is dangerous. If you think that being dorky means that you're less than whole, you'll spend your entire life trying to fulfill this hole of queerness that can't be done with external validation. Not even the person who loves you the most can save you. You have to understand how to really accept this side of you and understand that most people who aren't shallow have a unique personality. You think that you're indifferent to society when in fact you're indifferent to yourself. That's why no one can save you, because no one can save you from yourself. Hiding behind the external doesn't guarantee freeness, so embrace your dorkiness. It might be the very thing that sets you free.